This is the Space Matrix. Don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon for more updated August 18, 2025. The Alaska Highway bustled with travelers, RVs, truckers, families chasing adventure. The border crossing at Beaver Creek, Yukon was routine. Passports, a stamp, a wave. Suddenly, the line of cars stopped. Minutes became an hour. Whispers grew into anxious chatter. A U.S. official stepped out expecting a customs agent, but met a stern RCMP officer. The message: the border was closed, not delayed, closed indefinitely. No U.S. traffic to Alaska. Confusion turned to disbelief, then anger. Families pleaded, truckers begged for their perishable cargo. Canadian authorities were polite but unyielding, no exceptions. Orders from Ottawa. The land bridge to Alaska was severed without warning. The same scene played out at every crossing. Abbotsford, Coutts, and more. American travelers were turned away, plans shattered. Those already in Canada were stranded, caught in a diplomatic vice. News spread like wildfire, social media, frantic calls. In an instant, the world's longest undefended border became an impassable wall. Thousands of Americans were left in limbo and Alaska was suddenly cut off. The shock was total. No one had seen it coming. The border, once a symbol of friendship, was now a barrier. The journey north had become a journey interrupted. For many, the adventure of a lifetime had turned into a nightmare. The world watched as an entire state was left isolated. Ottawa's announcement came swiftly. All land transit to and from Alaska was suspended for non-essential U.S. travelers. Commercial traffic faced new, undefined inspections. The reason? National security and environmental protection. For Alaskans, the impact was immediate. The Alaska Highway is their lifeline: food, medicine, supplies. The closure threw supply chains into chaos. Store owners in Tuk and Delta Junction stared at dwindling inventories. Isolation, always part of Alaskan life, now felt threatening. The Canadian government offered little explanation, fueling anxiety. Was it health, security, or politics? No one knew. Air and sea routes remained but couldn't handle the volume or cost. This wasn't a minor inconvenience, it was a fundamental disruption for an entire state. The consequences would echo for weeks, if not months. Canadian officials soon clarified, the closure was about environmental safety. Recent U.S. truck spills in British Columbia and Yukon had threatened sensitive ecosystems. Canada blamed lax U.S. regulations and demanded action. But beneath the surface, political tensions simmered, trade disputes, ignored grievances, and frustration with Washington. The closure was leverage, a risky move to force U.S. attention. Security concerns also played a role. Unregulated cross-border movements had increased. Canada insisted this was about protecting its land and people, not attacking the U.S. The rationale was a mix of real incidents and political maneuvering. Environmental threats, trade disputes, and security worries all collided. But a full border closure was unprecedented. What began as simmering disagreements had become an international crisis. Canada gambled that the pain in Alaska would bring the U.S. to the table. It was a high-stakes move, with both nations now locked in a standoff. The world watched as a diplomatic gamble threatened to spiral out of control. The stakes had never been higher for both countries. The border, once open and trusted, was now a flashpoint. News of the closure reached former President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He erupted on social media. "Weak Trudeau has closed the border to our great state of Alaska. This is an act of war." Trump's posts framed the closure as an attack on American strength. In video messages, he called Trudeau a disgrace, demanded military action, and even suggested building a wall on the northern border. "We feed them, we protect them, and this is the thanks we get? Unacceptable!" His rhetoric inflamed his base, turning a complex crisis into a rallying cry. Hashtags like #FreeAlaska trended as Trump called for boycotts and tariffs. His response was not diplomatic, it was a declaration of economic and political warfare. While diplomats tried to de-escalate, Trump poured gasoline on the fire. His supporters echoed his outrage, intensifying pressure on the White House. Trump had inserted himself at the center of the crisis. Any resolution would now be measured against his aggressive stance. The political temperature soared, complicating any hope for a quick solution. In Washington, the official response was measured, but tense. The White House condemned Canada's abrupt action, while the Secretary of State's call to Ottawa yielded little progress. The administration was caught between appearing strong and avoiding a trade war. Congress was divided. Some demanded harsh retaliation, others urged caution. Alaska's delegation, united, demanded federal action to reopen the border. In Ottawa, opposition leaders and business groups criticized the closure, warning of economic fallout. Behind the scenes, negotiators scrambled for a solution. The U.S. demanded immediate reopening. Canada presented its grievances. Trust was at an all-time low. Both sides faced intense domestic pressure. Finding middle ground seemed nearly impossible. For border communities, the crisis was personal. In Hyder, Alaska, accessible only through Canada, residents were cut off from schools, groceries, even medical care. "We get our mail in Stewart. What are we supposed to do now?" asked one resident. In Stewart, BC, neighbors worried for friends just across the line. The two towns, once a single community, were now divided by politics. In Point Roberts, Washington, residents were trapped, cut off from the rest of their state. "We need fuel, medical supplies, this isn't sustainable," said the local fire chief. The closure was a humanitarian crisis, not just a political one. Families were separated, businesses threatened, and daily life upended. The invisible line had become a real, cruel wall. Generations of cross-border ties were suddenly severed. The social and economic fabric of these communities unraveled overnight. The border, once a symbol of connection, was now a source of pain. Real people bore the brunt of distant political decisions. The crisis exposed the deep interdependence of life along the 49th parallel. For many, the sense of betrayal was profound. The cost of the closure was measured in hardship, not headlines. As the standoff entered its second day, the future was uncertain. The US weighed retaliation, tariffs, slowdowns, even restricting Canadian access to airspace. Canada hoped pressure would force US concessions on environmental and trade issues, but they may have underestimated the American response. The most likely outcome: intense, high-stakes negotiations. A temporary deal could reopen the border while disputes are addressed. Both leaders needed a face-saving solution. But the damage was done. Trust shattered, resentment sown. For Alaskans and border communities, the crisis was a stark reminder of their vulnerability. The world watched, wondering if old friends could repair the rift, or if a new era of tension had begun.